Utopia is a British thriller drama television series written by Dennis Kelly and directed by Mark Munden, originally broadcast on Channel 4 from January 2013 to August 2014. Set in and around the UK, it follows a group of people only connected by the obsession of a comic book utopia that has predicted several world tragedies and illnesses. Finding an unreleased version of the comic leads them to be chased by a government organisation known as the Network. This critical commentary will focus on the opening introduction scene to the show where two Network agents enter the comic shop and kill the workers for selling the unreleased comic. It sets up how Utopia effectively tells its story and darker themes through cinematography, light, colour and sound.
The government's coming under increasing pressure to take urgent action to reduce the soaring cost of food. The latest food price index indicates that many food commodities on international markets have doubled in value in the last 6 months, reflected by rocketing prices.
Utopia uses light and colour to subvert expectations. While typical TV and film is coloured in red, blue and green, Utopia is coloured in the opposite: cyan, magenta and yellow. Director Mark Munden stated in an interview, "Normally the way you'd colour a piece of cinematography is by constructing it with greens, blues and reds. The free-strip Technicolor process we use consists of the opposite colours. I was interested in Doris Day films from the 1950s that push those distinct elements. This causes the colours in the show to pop and appear far more saturated like a comic book. The light works hand in hand with the colour and shots. Rather than using traditional mid-shots, Utopia experiments with wider shots. When a character is centred, they are far away, making them feel tiny to the audience. Lighting often embodies emotional values that you would expect, such as warm, cosy interiors, but Utopia favours flat, hyper-real lighting that keeps the viewer on the edge, creating a clever misdirection that undercuts comfort. Sharon Haley states in an article, "Artistic factors, as the high-key lighting, helps colours appear more vibrantly, which is a big focus in the scene. However, this is also used to create juxtaposition through the heavenly, dreamlike visuals that appear in contrast with the brutal reality of the situation. In the comic book scenes, the lighting is high-key and brightly lit, ensuring the oversaturated colours pop, making almost everyday items come across as alien, intensifying the visual punch. Conventional media uses a washed colour palette for shows with violent themes. Utopia capitalises on this false security, both with a saturated colour palette that making the violence and blood pop, and by shocking the audience more when the violence happens. In the opening scene, the denotion of the cornfield sets the calm equilibrium to the viewer while presenting the hyper-real world that the show is set in. The corn connotes peace and harmony to the viewer due to the association of nature. Along with the synchronous sound of the corn only being heard within the shot with a calm tumbler, this combination of the static wide shot along with the saturated colour palette allows the audience to relax as it all seems still and colourful. Because of the clarity of contemporary soundtracks, we are able to perceive and appreciate a more complete environment for every image we see. Various properties of the sounds we hear contribute to the creation of aural space. In film and TV, sound is used to emphasise or represent character emotion and the atmospheric mood. The backing soundtrack connotes both alien and childlike. The echo of the hand drum can connote the isolation and large space the characters have within the frame of the wide shots. This creates an uneasy feeling for the audience, building on the slow reveal of the shop's takeover. The soundscape up to the point of death is purely diegetic until the killing of the first worker, where the soundtrack appears synchronously with the first death.
You heard this? Where is it? What's the matter with you? I just said we're closed.
After the death, the soundtrack slowly increases in volume, building on the dread and confusion. This soundtrack uses two registers of the screen language. On the one hand, coming across as very sinister and menacing, which is proportionate to the death as a viewer we see on screen. But on the contrary, it also comes across as childlike and silly, undermining the interpretation of the death. This relates to the light and colour, with the cyan, yellow, magenta saturated colour palette making the characters seem more comic-like and silly, while also enhancing the violence by making the blood and injuries pop more on screen. The two registers leave the interpretations open for what happens in the rest of the scene. The use and lack of soundtrack throughout the scene enhances the intensity to the viewer. Notably, the soundtrack fades out before the second death, leaving the audience to only focus on the worker pleading for his life and the diegetic hissing of the gas.
Not yet.
In relation to film sound, Ellis claims, film sound is placed in relation to the image, it is orientated by vision and it produces a regime of intensified listening. The hissing of the gas with the lack of soundtrack causes the audience to intensely focus on the killing of the worker. The absence of the soundtrack combined with the hissing of the gas makes the killing more drawn out, intense and slow. Turning to the cinematography, the wide shots track the movements of Lee. The effect of this is that it projects Lee as a powerful individual. By mimicking his movements, it gives him more control within the scene, thus setting him up as the clear villain. The human eye is drawn towards movements and the brightest area in shot. Deliberately, the scenes with Lee are noticeable of the camera following him, thus leading his power. On the contrary, the static, unreactive shots of his partner Pietre make him come across as psychopathic, due to the wide static shots paired with his unreactive responses to Lee's actions. Psychopathy is a disorder characterised in part by shallow emotional responses, lack of empathy, impulsivity, and an increased likelihood for antisocial behaviour. The lighting from the high-key saturation now switches, desaturating the shot and making both Pietro and his surroundings grey, signifying a switch in the character's intentions from Lee's bright authoritarian control of the situation and Pietro's thuggish intimidation. Pietro's centralisation on a wider frame creates his intimidating dominance in the wider aspect ratio, simultaneously giving him unnatural order through his isolation to the rest of the frame. The lack of isolation in the shot-reverse shot for the worker furthers Pietro's power, with the camera dollying in slowly around him to further his intensity, drawing out the shot. In the screen language, we can read this partnership in multiple ways. A typical villain partnership is seen across wide media, such as in Star Wars with Darth Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin, two characters on an equal level of partnership under collective boss, both with different intimidating personalities. Because of this, we can connote Lee and Pietro as powerful partners that intimidate and control situations with their different psychopathic personalities, contributing to the dark themes of the show. Another reading of the screen language could complement the wider comic and childlike villain partnerships seen in children's media, such as the Wet Bandits in Home Alone and the Henchman in 100 Dalmatians. This villain trope often presents the two partners' differences as comedic.
I've got the knob for this job.
The centralisation of the characters in the show is similar with the style of Wes Anderson, centralising the shots and characters with a unique colour palette, with this style furthering the fantasy-like portrayal of the show rather than dark realism. Therefore, the partner's two personalities in the show connotes the childlike comic book stories that the show is linked with, even suggested in the dark comedic moments with Lee lighting a cigarette after causing a gas leak.
I'm gasping. I like it outside.
The soundtrack also remains present throughout a majority of the scene. Composer Cristobal Tapia de Vere's score blends electronic drones, unsettling tonal clusters, and irregular rhythms with intense timbre. This isn't background music, it's part of the narrative texture. While present throughout the scene, the crinkling diegetic audio of Pietro's lever dominates, with the lever connoting villainy and power immediate in history, such as with a Nazi uniform. The combination of the camera slowly following Pietro down to reveal a boy solidifies the intensity to the audience. He, like Lee, now has control of the camera's movement. The key light on Pietro fully outlines him from the rest of the background, his leather jacket allowing us to focus on his face, highlighting his lack of ability to smile. The lower lighting and wide angle on the boy solidifies the control Pietro has and keeps the focus on him. With the camera dollying in slowly on his face and the soundtrack slowly building, it preys on the audience's fear, resulting in the perfect unseen horror. Unseen horror in films relies on the fear of the unknown, using what's not shown where the viewer's imagination is far worse than what could be shown on screen, resulting in the final shot of the dancing rabbit with the title card playing as the child is killed off screen. In summary, Mark Munden's use of lighting, colour, cinematography and sound are creative choices that allow the audience to engage in this dark, alien yet childlike world. The scene breaks down traditional villain tropes and makes us question the different presentation of darker adult themes and childhood comic fantasy.